Hi everyone, I'm Rebecca Virginia, and today I have brand new fall DIYs for 2024. These are all pretty quick and easy ones, so they are perfect to get started on now, and you'll have them all ready for when the season is actually upon us and we have some nice fall weather, not this 90-degree summer. I am so ready for fall. So the first DIY is really easy. I picked up 3 pumpkins from the Dollar Tree. I really liked the design on these, but because they were painted white, you really couldn't see them, and I really liked the more textured pumpkins. Pottery Barn always sells these. They're really expensive, so I got this terracotta paint from Folk Art, and I don't know, I just couldn't really see any terracotta effects. I wanted a lot more texture. I ended up realizing it's probably because of the pumpkin I used, so I did end up just kind of going the old school route and mixing a little bit of baking powder in with my paint. That gives a really nice texture, almost like a concrete effect, but I only used a little bit, so I got more of the terracotta effect, and this is really what I was going for. Again, more of that texture. I did the exact same thing with one of the smaller pumpkins. This one already had a nice color on it, but I wanted them to match. This color is called Pueblo, and again, this is from the Terracotta collection of paint. I actually picked it up on Amazon. I think it was only about $3. I wasn't able to find it in any of my local Walmarts, this specific type of paint. And then I moved on to this larger pumpkin. I thought it was a really good deal for $3. I mean, look how tiny that one was, and that was $1.25. So for $5.50, I ended up getting 3 pumpkins. I thought that was pretty good. I did go in with some white spray paint. I took this pumpkin outside and spray painted it. And once I started adding on the paint onto this, it must have been the texture of the pumpkin, but once this dried, it came out looking so much nicer than the previous 2 had. It had a really good texture to it and wasn't shiny like the previous 2 pumpkins. So I'm guessing it was just the material of the pumpkin. Also, if you are longtime viewers, you might be wondering if I recently got a tattoo, and actually no, this was a temporary one that I got at the Dollar Tree and put on. So you might see that in the video, but it's just fake. So you can see once this dried, it just looked so much nicer than the first 2. So I went in with 2 coats and then let this completely dry. Once these were dry, I went in with a smaller paintbrush and the same style of paint by Folk Art, but this time in the white shade. This one was called Snow, and I'm going into all the indentations that are already on that pumpkin. This way we're going to add a lot of depth, highlight those areas, and give some nice texture to our pumpkin. I did the exact same method on the 2 smaller pumpkins, but instead of just adding a little bit of white and highlight, I pretty much covered the entire pumpkin because you can see that all of the indentations and the swirl design on the pumpkin really shined through when I went over it with the white, because the orange color, the Pueblo by Folk Art, stayed in the indentations of the swirls, and I love the way that came out. Also, I decided, since all of my pumpkins were the exact same color, I did go in with a little bit of Waverly chalk paint in the shade Pumpkin on this smaller, wider pumpkin, just to add a little bit of variety. So if you notice that it's a little bit of a different color than I showed in the last clip, that is why. The finishing step for these pumpkins was to paint the stems. I had taped out the stem of the larger pumpkin, but I forgot to on the smaller ones, but it was a pretty easy fix. I just went in with my favorite dark brown shade by Apple Barrel. It's called Cypress Umber, and placed that on the stems of our pumpkins. And I love the way that these came out. They look just like the ones I've seen in the Pottery Barn magazine, but for only $5.50. Next DIY, I wanted to do a larger piece of decor, but still using Dollar Tree items and probably some supplies that you already had. Dollar Tree always comes out with these pumpkin signs. I want to say they first came out maybe about 3 years ago when I really started doing crafting more, especially for the different holidays and seasons. So I had this one in my craft stash, but I have seen it out. And for this one, the 3 pumpkins are going to be our focal point. So I ended up cutting 3 pumpkins out of vinyl and then placing these on the board. You can do the exact same thing by just printing out an image of the pumpkin. This is literally just going to be a stencil for our yarn. You could also freehand it, etch it on, draw it. Really, this is, again, just a stencil. You're not going to be able to see it because we're going to be covering it in yarn. I picked up 3 different shades of yarn from Walmart, and then the process really began. It was a long one, but super easy. Again, you already have the outline there for you. I put a show on YouTube and was watching it as I went through. I used my small brush to paint the Mod Podge onto the line since it was smaller. So then I just went in with the yarn and started laying it flat using things like the back of the paintbrush and my scissors just to make sure that the yarn was laying flat. You can definitely use a hot glue gun for this. It'll probably be a little bit faster, but I had recently burned myself pretty bad with my hot glue gun, so I wanted to be on the safer side, so I just went in with Mod Podge. Yes, it took a little bit longer, but the end result was much nicer and I didn't have to worry about any burnt fingers. I will speed through because it's not too exciting just watching me place yarn on 2 stencils, but I placed it on all 3 of my pumpkins and then finished everything off with an X bow. The next DIY uses a supply that you might actually already have laying around your house. We're going to make a magnetic pumpkin that you can put on your fridge using some canning jar lids. So I actually had one of them, but I didn't have enough to make the pumpkin, so I picked up this pack of 12 at Walmart and it was only $2. So really not a big expense, and now I have a bunch of them that I can use for future DIYs. For this craft, you're going to need 3 of them, and I covered them with paint. This paint is called Pumpkin by Waverly, and just like the name suggests, it is that perfect pumpkin-y shade. I ended up doing 2 coats of the pumpkin shade before I brought out my hot glue gun to assemble the pumpkin. It's really easy. You're just going to place the 2 down and then 1 in the center. I did have to add a little bit of hot glue on the back there. And then I moved on to accessorizing the pumpkin. I had some of this green ribbon, so I cut out a leaf. I just freehanded it, didn't have to be perfect or anything. It's just going behind the pumpkin, and I hot glued that down. I also wanted a little bit of Spanish moss on the front of the pumpkin, so I just laid down some more hot glue and then pressed that down. I love the way that Spanish moss looks, but goodness, it is so messy and it causes so much dust in the air. So I hate using it, but I love the way it looks. So that is kind of my issue there. I also wanted to add a little bit more embellishment. So I had some gold wire and wrapped it around a pen nice and tight to create a coil, and also hot glued that onto our pumpkin. The next step, I needed a little bit of help from my dog. We went out in the backyard and looked for our pumpkin stem. I found a twig, so I hot glued that onto the back. My dog definitely loved doing this step with me. And then the finishing touch is adding a small magnet on the back. This way I was able to put it on my fridge, but if you don't want to turn it into a magnet, then obviously just don't do that step. The Dollar Tree currently has all of their fall florals out, or at least at my Dollar Trees, and per usual, they always knock it out of the park with their fall florals, so I wanted a way to display them. I love the amber bottles. It fits perfect with the fall theme. I've actually seen videos where if you have a clear jar, you can turn it into an amber bottle by putting it in the oven, and I think using some sort of like food coloring. But in this case, I actually had these amber bottles. I picked them up from Costco. They were soap bottles, and I had just run out of it and almost threw it away, but I kept it, and I'm really glad I did. I think it has a really nice apothecary kind of vibe. So I cleaned off the soap stickers from it, and then I found my own. I will leave this link down below in my bio if you want to print it out. I printed mine out onto some sticker paper and then was able to stick it right on there. But if you don't have sticker paper, you can just apply it with some Mod Podge. Next is the fun part, adding in all of our fall florals. I had some pine cones, and then I went in with some orange flowers. If you don't already, make sure to follow me on Instagram. I'll leave it down below in my bio. I always post on Instagram some reels and photos of what I'm finding at the Dollar Tree. So if you're ever curious what the Dollar Tree has out, you can always head over to my Instagram, and I'm usually posting on what I'm finding in my store specifically. So after adding in all of these florals, I wanted to add a little bit more of a rustic touch. And if you guys have been watching my videos for a while, then you know that I have been having the hardest time finding jute at the Dollar Tree. I haven't found it in about 6 months. So I did pick some up from Walmart, but it's just not as thin as the Dollar Tree ones. It's still pretty thick. So I'm still on the hunt. I even looked in the automobile section of Dollar Tree. I know some people said they had found jute there. Haven't been able to find it. So let me know in the comments down below if you found jute in your Dollar Trees, because I'm just forever on the hunt for it. I'm going to buy about 10 of them when I see them because I just haven't been able to find anything that's as good as it. So I did take this Walmart version and just tied it in a bow at the top and then cut off any of the excess. Thank you all so much for watching. I will be back next week with a brand new fall DIY video. Until then, keep searching, keep creating.